Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
This episode is brought to you by White Claw Surge. Great podcast pick, friend. No surprises there. After all, you're all about finding the tastiest flavors out there, just like White Claw Surge. And with big, bold flavors to enjoy, like blood orange, blackberry, cranberry, and more, it's time to go all in on taste. Unleash the flavor. Unleash White Claw Surge. Please drink responsibly. Hard seltzer with flavors. 8% alcohol by volume. White Claw Seltzer Works. Chicago, Illinois.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. Today, I'm joined by my legislative team colleague, Avi Bajpai. We're recording this in the middle of a busy day of Senate action, no House action yet, on Monday, September 22nd. If you are listening to this Tuesday morning, the Senate did a lot on Monday, and Tuesday is really the day that they're waiting for the House to choose to take up or not take up what they've sent them. Our main focus today is on Iryna's Law, which is this omnibus crime bill that Senate Leader Phil Berger and House Speaker Dustin Hall told reporters just in the past few weeks was coming. They didn't reveal all the details then. The bill is now out. It's already gone through committees on Monday as we're recording this, and will be on the Senate floor for a vote. Avi, you've been following this closely. What does the final product look like? And again, for people that don't understand the name of the bill, this is in the wake of the fatal stabbing death of Iryna and Charlotte Light Rail just about a month ago.
Yeah, fatal stabbing of Iryna Zarutska, 23-year-old refugee from Ukraine who came here with her family and died on the Blue Line light rail in late August. This was a case that received major national attention, especially after the authorities in Charlotte released video footage of what happened. The White House kind of quickly got involved, weighed in. President Trump weighed in and called for the death penalty for the person charged. So there's a lot going on in this bill.
We also talked about this on the podcast last week with our Charlotte colleague. So what's in this actual bill now that's moving through the General Assembly? Yeah,
so there's a lot. It's 17 pages. The kind of main piece, one of the main pieces, something that Speaker Hall and Senator Berger previewed a couple of weeks ago, and it's really dealing with bail laws. So it's looking at the bail laws on the books in North Carolina. There's a couple of different, basically when you're arrested, charged with a crime, brought before a judge, there's different kinds of pretrial release conditions, different options. There's secured bonds, unsecured bonds, house arrest, with monitoring. And then there's something called a written promise to appear, which is just what it sounds like. It's just a kind of like a legal, document that says you're promising to come back in court. That's what was the pretrial release condition. And in this case, with the man who is charged, DeCarlos Brown Jr., he was arrested on a misdemeanor charge. I believe it's a misdemeanor of misusing the 911 system. And he was released by a magistrate in January of this year on a written promise to appear. So that's what's kind of like captivated the debate, the discussion over this case. That's what's being targeted here.
So if the bill becomes law, how would that be different?
The bill basically eliminates written promises to appear altogether, not just for certain offenses, for all kinds of offenses. So going forward, judges and magistrates in North Carolina would not be able to even use this as a condition. It would just be the other ones that are on the books. There's a couple of other things too. So this bill creates a broad category of existing offenses in state law and groups them together and calls them violent offenses. So it's a very long list. A lot of them are offenses that state law already requires only a judge can set the pretrial release condition for. So very serious stuff like murder, kidnapping, rape, sexual offenses, human trafficking, stuff like that. There's some other things that the bill adds to that too. So basically under this bill, if someone is charged with what this bill calls a violent offense, the only two pretrial release conditions that are possible are a secured bond, which means that you have to upfront put up a certain amount of money in a bond to get your release, or house arrest with electronic monitoring. So that's another kind of expansion of this and trying to crack down on this particular aspect of it.
It's important to note that, for those who aren't familiar with the exact numbers of who's in control of the legislature, if this is something that Speaker Hall and Senate Leader Berger have already agreed on, then because they have majorities and Republican majorities in each chamber, then it will pass, even if Democrats don't support it. However, if Governor Josh Stein decides to veto the bill, in the Senate, they have the numbers because they have a supermajority to override a veto. The House doesn't unless they have at least one Democrat to vote with them. And there are a handful of Democrats in the House who have voted with Republicans on overriding some bills, especially when it might come to public safety type of bill. So that I'm sure that, Stein is weighing, once the bill is sent to his desk. So as I mentioned before, we're recording this on Monday afternoon. It'll be on the Senate floor in about an hour. What was it like in Judiciary Committee this morning as they talked about the bill?
It's still early, right? I mean, this was Monday morning, less than 12, roughly half a day after the bill came out Sunday evening. So lawmakers were still going through it, reviewing it very carefully, closely during committee. In fact, I think Judiciary Committee, that's hard to say.
It is hard to say, yeah.
J Committee started at 11, but because the adjournment resolution, I think this is why the adjournment resolution that lawmakers passed in June or whenever that was, only allows them to formally come back at 12 p.m. Mm-hmm. They couldn't even take up amendments or vote on it until 12. So they were just discussing it for the first hour. I didn't hear a lot of it wasn't super contentious in committee. I think, again, because it's still being reviewed. There were some objections raised by Democrats about there's some stuff in here dealing with the death penalty, but it's a little kind of narrower than what maybe some people were expecting. It's dealing with the appeals process for in capital cases. So there were some questions, some objections raised to that on that issue, and some other things too. But it's early. I reached out to the governor's office. You mentioned Governor Stein, and a spokesperson for his office said that they're also just reviewing the bill right now.
That's pretty much standard governor responses. Yeah. I feel like it was really unusual when Stein was just in office for a couple of months and he did his State of the State and said, "I'll sign the Helene recovery bill." It's very rare that governor says they'll sign or veto. I mean, some things are pretty obvious, but this one may not be as much. I mean, once people look into the actual details of the bill, if it's Stein supports some of it or think it's worth signing. The other thing is that he can let it become law without his signature if he does nothing after 10 days. And that's something that former Governor Roy Cooper, also a Democrat, would do, where he maybe didn't think he had the Democrats to hold for, to prevent an override, but disagreed with some things in the bill. You let it become law without your signature. You issue a statement about what you don't like about it, but it's enough that you either know you're not going to win the battle or you're okay with the bill, even if you're not totally okay with the bill. Right?
Yeah. That reminds me, I think, if I recall correctly, that in 2023 there was a bill that increased penalties for rioting, and this was a bill sponsored by then Speaker Moore, and the Democratic support for it actually increased from previous iterations.
I'm pretty sure they changed the bill. Yeah, they had changed the bill to get more Democrats.
I think that bill was allowed to become law without Governor Cooper's signature, as one example. But it's Monday afternoon. Session is in about an hour. So one thing we'll be looking out for by the time you're listening to this will, we're expecting the Senate to vote on this today itself. But I'm just looking out to see what the discussion is like on this bill. We've already heard some criticism from Democrats.
In the House, Representative Marcia Moria is one.
Yeah, she told me on Sunday that she thought that the bill was a missed opportunity. She said that there were some things in the bill, like something that you've reported on, written about the racial equity task force that Governor Cooper created in 2020. Mm-hmm. That's something that there's like a provision in this bill that just kind of formally says that task force cannot be brought back, even though it already expired in last year. So there were some things that she was saying, she finds as more politics than policy. But
Maury is a Durham Democrat and a former judge. So we need to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to tell you what else is going on at the legislature. Another thing to note is they haven't done anything for 2 months, and then all of a sudden they're doing it all at once. So if you're wondering, they haven't been talking about a lot of lawmaking lately, it's because they haven't been making any laws lately. They came back in July for a few days, and then at the end of August, we thought there might be a budget deal, and in fact, there was not. So we'll tell you more about the latest on that after the break.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Eczema is unpredictable, but you can flare less with Ebglyss, a once-monthly treatment for moderate to severe eczema. After an initial 4-month or longer dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with my politics team colleague, Avi Bajpai, as we're recording this at the General Assembly building in downtown Raleigh. Special shout out to WNC Capitol Bureau Chief Colin Campbell for letting us use the WNC studio to record this, so you all don't have to hear the background noise of other reporters in the press room, since Avi and my desks are usually in a crowd of other people. So thank you to Colin and WNC, who you've heard all of us on their podcast sometimes too, or on the radio. So as we were, before the break, we were talking about Iryna's law, which is expected to pass the House Monday or by the time you listen to this. And it really, like, the bill is in the court of the House now. And Hall has already said that, that he's also behind this. Yeah, it's been pre-negotiated. There are some other things that haven't been pre-negotiated. And so the Senate Appropriations Committee also met today on Monday, the 22nd, and had, I want to say, 7 or 8 different appropriations bills, these mini budget bills. I'd mentioned that lawmakers were back for a few days at the end of July. They passed a mini budget then that authorized the step increase raises and some other things. So now the Senate is running a series of different mini budget bills, basically to see what the House will take up and what they won't take up. So if you're a House member listening to this on Tuesday, the Senate, also because these approps bills were also expected to go to the floor and be voted out of the Senate on Monday afternoon. So those bills are now waiting what the House wants to do. And one that Senate Leader Berger himself came to, it's always kind of a surprise if you see Berger Hall in a committee, because usually they don't present bills. But Berger has a bill. It's about law enforcement raises that they're calling the Back the Blue Act. And it has a series. I've even just going through the details, now pausing, writing my story to record our podcast about what those percentage of raises are for different levels of law enforcement, at not just the state, but local level too. And it also includes some bonuses for National Guard. So if there's enough support in the House, we'll see some House action on that. There's also, it could be the most controversial bill, a defund Planned Parenthood bill that our colleague Luciana Perez Uribe-Ganassi is writing about. And her story will be up, I'm sure, published by the time you all are listening to this. And this is a bill that Senator Amy Scott Galey is running and had people speak against it during the committee on pretty short notice. All these bills, the proposed committee substitutes came out and given to lawmakers, but not the public, on Sunday night. Of course, the big crime bill announcement came out Sunday night. Thankfully, Avi was on weekend reporting duty.
It worked out well.
Yeah, he wrote that. And then Luciana also wrote about the healthcare bill. So those are the other big things that are moving this week. Is there anything else on Iryna's law that you think will come out of this that we should be watching for this week, these next few days?
I think we have to see like the rest of the stakeholders in this, in the criminal justice system, like, what they make of it. The Eddie Caldwell from the Sheriff's Association was in committee on Monday morning, expressing support for the bill. But he was saying, I heard him say a couple of times that they view this as a first step to making some changes and making some reforms in light of this fatal stabbing in Charlotte. And he was saying that I think they're hopeful that he said between now and April, when lawmakers come back for the short session, that this is the first part of kind of continuation of measures to take up. So the Sheriff's Association, different law enforcement groups, but also like this has major ramifications for judicial officials, for judges, magistrates. There is a provision in here kind of giving the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, currently Republican Paul Newby, basically like some oversight power to suspend magistrates. So I think this is going to have a lot of ramifications across the entire judicial system. And one thing we'll have to, look out for is just what those ramifications are, and then what the response is like, and what this is going to be a kind of evolving process.
That's interesting. You mentioned as far as like some power moves. Another thing that came up in one of these mini budget bills would give State Auditor Dave Bullock, a Republican, 2 more floors of office space in the Albemarle building. The Albemarle building used to be where Department of Insurance was. It's it's across the street from the Legislative Office building. It's sort of nondescript if you're not familiar. If you're familiar with downtown Raleigh, the huge construction site where they're building the education campus. It's the new-ish looking building that's behind it because it was renovated some time ago. But the governor's offices are there too. And the auditor, back when it was Beth Wood, had moved over to that space, I think, first with the renovated space. And now it's Bullock, and looks like they're going to give him some more office space. All right, let's move on to our picks for Headliner of the Week. Avi, what is your Headliner of the Week?
I'm going to go with Representative Jared Lowry of Robeson County, who made an announcement on this past Friday. As Dawn mentioned, I was working the weekend shift, so I was writing this up on Saturday. But it sounds like Representative Lowry, said he's going to be stepping down from the General Assembly at the beginning of October, and to pursue a job in Washington, in D.C. So that's a big announcement. We're waiting to hear from him exactly what his new role is going to be. He did kind of tease that he'll continue to be a public servant, is what he said. So that gives you some clue. But that's some big news from a kind of influential member on the Republican side. So yeah.
Is he here? I believe he was here for the House Skeletal
House Skeletal session at noon today. So yeah, he's here.
So hasn't left quite yet.
No, and he said in his video on Friday that he plans to continue working on legislation, and he asked his constituents to keep bringing issues to his attention. So
to the end of the month, I think.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. My pick for headliner of the week is a story from our colleague Corey Dean, who covers higher education. She wrote about how UNC tuition might be going up. And I am a parent of a senior in high school, so anything or if I see tuition in a headline, I'm definitely reading that story. Maybe not particularly looking forward to all of a sudden having surprised that things are even more expensive already. But it doesn't appear to be a done deal yet. We'll see which schools raise tuition and how. And this also, it comes on the same, past week of news where Wake Forest University is offering free tuition for different categories for students. So I think it'll be interesting to see how recruiting students to your school, funding it, public versus private, and everything that's part of like all government, is part of higher education too. So that's my headliner. All right, we're out of time, and we need to head upstairs from the press room, which is in the dungeon / basement garage of the legislative building, to the Senate session, which in theory is starting at 3:00, but on legislative time, sometimes it's a little bit after. So you can place your bets for what the actual start time will be. I'm Dawn Vaughan for Avi Bajpai, producer Laura Brache. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Sign up for our political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.